Hello and welcome to another episode of Cavell Cloud Conversations, the three C's. Though we aren't C's, I mean, I'm Finbarr, this is Patrick. Neither of those names begin with a C, and we don't have a third caster, so no three C's. We are here today. We've just had our Cavell Enable event in London. Cavell Enable, for those who are slightly less familiar, is where we actually really show off how geeky we are as a company. And rather than doing like a broad topic, like let's talk about the communications industry or the contact center industry, we talk about how you get telephony into collaboration and other applications and why that's important, right? So you need to get a phone number into your Microsoft Teams, you need to get a phone number into your application, why it's relevant, how people are doing it, and why it's actually worth a lot of money. Is that a good summary of the event, Patrick?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So, it's exactly that. It's how telephony services are being deployed within specific applications and marketplaces. And the primary examples are three gold sponsors this year were Microsoft, Zoom, and Cisco. And if you look at their platforms, they all run the market's leading collaboration platforms. And everybody at the event was focused on generally how you best equip telephony, how you enable telephony, how you make money from a service provider perspective within any of those platforms. So it might have been Cisco WebEx, could have been Zoom, might be Microsoft Teams, but you're absolutely right. That was the key premise of the event.
Yes. And that is a vital part, of course, of the modern communications industry, because while a user may not realize how difficult it is to put in a telephone number and have it call through into someone's Microsoft Teams application, I can tell you that the user experience is deliberately made easy, because if it was complicated, you wouldn't do it. But on the back end, there's actually quite a lot of things going on, which is why it forms such an interesting part of the market. It was a great event. I mean, I think we had, over 250 people there, just a buzzing day all day. And we obviously were on the agenda as well. I ran a little bit of a CX session in the afternoon, talking about how vital it is to have good quality voice in the CX landscape, and why it's becoming more important. This is my keynote. Why it's becoming more important to have voice interlocked and interlaced throughout the CCaaS ecosystem, because we need to have high quality voice, and we need to be taking conversational data out of that voice, so it has to be of a certain standard, and you have to run it through call recording and stuff like that and make it work, because we need that conversational data both at a customer experience level and an organizational level to actually build the vision of the future that we want, that involves 10 kinds of AI and automating 20 different things. Patrick, you were also, I know you had many sessions on the day because this is kind of your baby. What sort of things were you talking about?
Yeah, so the main keynote. So what we wanted to do was so you're absolutely. I think it goes back to your initial point. So we do our summit events. The next one will be coming up in Europe in March, which we'll host in London, and those are general events covering the entire of communications. This is very specifically looking, as you said, at those telephony enablement marketplaces. So one of the first things we wanted to do was sort of size that for people. How big are those markets? So we looked at that from a data perspective. So take a market like North America. This is some of the data that I've shared in the keynote. There are 90 plus million telephony enabled users if you look at the US and Canada. And then how many of those are using these enablement markets? So how many are using Microsoft Operator Connect? How many are deployed through Zoom Provider Exchange? How many are deployed through WebEx Cloud Connect? And so we work backwards through the numbers, eliminating things that are deployed in different areas. And you end up with a really sizable market of nearly 5 million users that are deployed as of now, 2025, through these marketplaces. So really sizable opportunity for all of the service providers and telcos present. And then you look at our forecast for the future, and those numbers could triple by 2030. So you're talking about, and that was the title of my keynote, a 15 million user opportunity, and that's just through these very dedicated marketplaces. And then we obviously had a selection of sponsors there, from value-added service providers who offer a range of additional services that you can layer on top. So those 15 million users over the next few years not only have the sort of core revenue associated with them, but a huge range of other opportunities for service providers and telcos to sell. So yeah, that was the sort of main thing that I tried to focus on in the first keynote, was what is the size of this market and what's the opportunity for everybody there.
Yeah, exactly. Which, of course, I mean, it is a business focused show. We are trying to follow the money, as they say, and also help our partners and people who attend the event follow the money with us, because they're always accusing us of telling them the market's, growing and there's disastrous things on the horizon. And we're like, well, no, I mean, just do these 5 key easy things, which come, to the next event, and you'll find out what those 5 things are, and you can follow the money too. Then we kind of devolved into like questions and answers, because I got on the stage and I just started grilling you about lots of data that you've been coming out with. I mean, where did we, how deep did we go with that? I thought it got quite intense for a while.
Yeah. So let's, if I give everybody a little bit of the background. So one of the things that we, as you know from previous podcasts, we run our own proprietary research survey. So we survey tens of thousands of business every year with Finbarr, which you primarily lead. And one of the things that we were really focused on this time, that we wanted especially for Enable, was to hear from businesses that are using collaboration and have or have not deployed telephony. And there was a really key reason behind that. We've been getting lots of feedback from customers, and we really appreciate this, where they say, great, Cavell, you've provided loads of information about why people have deployed telephony in Zoom or telephony in WebEx. But actually, we're really interested in those, those businesses that haven't deployed telephony yet. Why haven't they done that? So we commissioned a specific research study. So this is 600 decision makers who run collaboration estates across North America and Western Europe to look at why they either have or haven't. And there were some really interesting findings in that. So I think there's a couple of points that you highlighted on stage in your questions, were that actually the business, we're seeing the overall business telephony market decrease. So the number of users in the market in all of these mature markets, but enterprises in the data are saying telephony is more important to them. And then it goes back to that point of interpretation. You mentioned voice in the contact center. Obviously, that's incredibly important for a lot of businesses. It's the key channel and way that they communicate with their customers. So I think there's an interpretation point. But what we found from that survey was some really interesting points. So when we asked businesses, why haven't you given telephony to all your users? The number one reason that they came back and they said, actually, there's a limited need for external calling. So, and that for a service provider audience, that's potentially quite a hard barrier to overcome. But then, as you rightly pointed out, there were a number of things that service providers can address: high implementation costs, complexity of deployment, regulatory or compliance concerns. So although service providers might not be able to address overall demand for telephony, although I think there is an argument that you can with your value propositions, actually things like implementation costs, complexity, and reassurance about compliance and security, you can address from a service provider or telco perspective. So I really hope, and I think we got some really good feedback on the day. I think some of those findings should be really interesting for people in the audience as to why enterprises haven't necessarily added telephony to all of their users.
And I think one of the key things that I focused on during the day, and I'll bring up again, is this, we do have an understanding that there was a model in the last 20 years where you joined a company, you got your phone number, and then you never used it to make calls, right? Or you use Teams instead. We know that the market is dropping for that very simple reason, that we're more conscious, we're aware that the need for a telephony is not ubiquitous, and we can take that away from people and save money. But as we pointed out, it's important to understand that from a sector point of view, when you identify the use cases where compliance is very important, data is very important, high quality connection is very important, maybe there is an inbound component, or maybe it's just letting people who don't connect with each other on collaboration call each other easily within an organization. There's all these little use cases that we're now using data to pick out on an industry-wide level. And those are high value use cases. And obviously the contact center ones I lean on a lot are very much high value use cases. But there's, what we're kind of saying is that using data to find this tapestry of little use cases in every business that are worth paying, each license doesn't cost that much. But when you add it up, there is quite a bit of a spend there. And it's just so fascinating to think, okay, well, it's easy to dismiss and say this number of people, I'm trying to remember the exact stat off the top of my head, but this number of people said, look, there just isn't a need for it. But quite a large percentage also said lots of other different problems with it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's that sort of contradictory piece that we're seeing that overall market decline. But when we asked in that survey, does PSTN telephony and collaboration justify the cost? 73% of businesses that took part in the survey said yes. And then when you ask those businesses, do you think telephony services are going to become more important or become less important in the future? The majority either think they're going to be significantly more important or more important in the future. That more than 50% of businesses. So you've got this perception of importance and perception of increased importance, but yet, as we talked about before, there are these barriers. And when we ask those businesses specifically, what could a service provider, what could your telephony provider do to encourage you to overcome some of those issues that we talked about previously in terms of complexity? They said better integration with IT infrastructure. So that's collaboration, and telephony within Teams or within Zoom or within Cisco is a really good example of that. It's where telephony really integrates with the wider IT stack, whether that's with the Microsoft productivity stack or Zoom Docs or Cisco's wider networking portfolio. And then the other things they asked for were easier deployment and management tools. As you said right up front in this, actually, from a user perspective, it's pretty straightforward. Once your telephony's set up, you dial on your native dialer.
If it's not,
from
then it's not working. Yeah.
No, but what you were saying, from a back-end admin perspective, it can be incredibly complicated to provision, deploy, and manage these users through different, tools within the Microsoft ecosystem or within Cisco and the Zoom ecosystem, and then improved training, support, and partner services. And I think that comes back to that point that you reiterated about users. If people aren't going to use it, you're not going to justify the cost for it. But if you really do show them the value, they know how to use it, they know when to use it, they know when to use an internal call, but they know when to use external telephony, and you've got the right training and process management in place for that, it makes a lot of sense. So I think a lot of that data came back and gave some really, tangible things that businesses can do. So yeah, I really think that was, it was really interesting for me and that all came back from feedback from customers, that we provided lots of research about why people had done it, but less about why they hadn't done it and what would make them do it in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this call we're having is an exact example of this. So people listening to the podcast won't realise we're doing this on a website called Riverside FM, a specific podcast recording tool. We used to record these just within Microsoft Teams. We had some issues with audio quality. So then, we could have just continued doing it the way we'd done it, but we sat down with someone from marketing who'd come in and said, well, actually, why don't we do it this way? And we were trained on how to use a new tool, which then fit that use case better. And that is a challenge that partners dealing with telephony have to deal with on a regular basis.
Yeah, completely.
What is actually, let's not think about the way that we have always done this. Think about the landline, think about the hard desk phone, or any of those kind of things. Let's think about the best way we should do this. Maybe that is that collaboration integration, because if you call someone on their mobile, they might have it on silent, it might be dead, etc. If you know they have Microsoft Teams open on their website, or WebEx or Zoom open on their desktop, 24/7, every day they're at work and they can take phone calls through it, suddenly you have the use case that best suits your business.
Yeah, because it has been a real it's a real phenomenon that we're looking at, and I'll pick on Microsoft just because and this is in Microsoft's credit, just because we've had the most detailed data from them in terms of usage adoption. So if you look at Microsoft Teams as a standard license, so the number of Microsoft Teams users rose from 2019, when there were a couple of years after launch, when there were 10 million monthly active users. Pandemic with the assist, to now, the last time we had numbers was 320 million, but it'll be more like 350 million Teams users globally. How many of those have telephony added? Only and are actively using it. Only around, the last numbers we got from Microsoft were back in March 24, only 20 million. So that's only around 6% of the Microsoft Teams user base, the collaboration user base, is using telephony. Now, I think our enterprise data has shown that telephony is more important than that proportionally. So why is there that disconnect? And that's what we wanted to do the research to really uncover behind. But I think my sort of rationale behind that is these collaboration platforms, partly driven by the pandemic, grew so quickly. The telephony capability and the telephony usage will gradually increase as people get more and more used to using them. All of that research that we've shown, businesses say they plan to increase the number of people internally who are using telephony, increase the numbers. So I think over time that percentage will increase. It's just to your point of how much is the demand affected at the top end, and where will the two figures meet? What will be the percentage of collaboration users that need an external telephony license? That's the really interesting question.
It most definitely is. Well, I can't install you to come to the event because we've already been and done that. But if you want to hear more of this sort of data, you want access to that research, you've heard this and you're like, I didn't even know you did a telephony enablement event. Sign me up for the next one. It will be next December. But we will be talking about this in March in London. And of course, our research is available. We are available as analysts. So if this is something you want to dig in more detail, if you've had your eyes opened to the world of telephony enablement, reach out via LinkedIn, via email. Come and find us. We're always willing to talk about this. And as you can see as well, I have been interviewing Patrick recently, at the event, but he is, of course, an expert when it comes to telephony enablement. And I think I am pretty confident in saying that globally, there are not that many people who specialize in this specific area. So come to us for our niche and let us help you understand how this can be a business opportunity for you as well. And we will do that.
Yeah, and I should just say, I'm not sure exactly when this will come out, but if anyone interested in content from the event, there'll be social clips and there'll be write-ups on the website. So head to cavell.com if you missed any of the content from the event. But next time, like you said, Finbarr, you have to attend in person.
Yeah, exactly. That's how you get the special secret tips that we don't tell people. We're quite an open podcast. We share a lot, but the events also do just have better access and more words from us on average, statistically. And with that, I think we're gonna wrap up, Patrick. I think we're gonna wrap up. It's been a good podcast. Thanks for listening. Tell your friends. Any final words?
No, just thanks everyone for attending Enable, and thanks for listening.
Thanks a lot. We'll speak to you all soon.